Yeah, hello. Hello, everybody. We are so delighted that you're joining us this afternoon. Thank you for being here. My name's Alexandra Goldman. I use she and her pronouns, and I am one of the co-directors of the New Mexico Health Equity Partnership. If folks want to introduce themselves in the chat, you are welcome to put your name, your pronouns. If you're affiliated with an organization and you want to share that, you can do that as well. And I don't know if you want to say something you're looking forward to eating now that it's fall, or it's almost fall. It's meteorological fall. It's coming, we know. So you can share that if you'd like. We're just super heartened that folks are interested to learn about this toolkit. The Healthy Masculinities Toolkit is a collection of readings, workshops, and exercises that are aimed at helping audiences reimagine masculinities, raise awareness about the concept of healthy masculinities, and provide skills and resources that promote self-awareness, healthy relationships, and thriving communities. So we're really excited to share with you some more about this workshop and how to execute it. And I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Michael. Thank you all so much for being here.
Hey, everybody. So thank you, Alexandra. I just popped my information into the chat. So please feel free to reach out to me. So just a quick overview about what the toolkit is and what this is going to look like. So basically, the Healthy Masculinities Toolkit is a collection of workshops and exercises, suggested readings that aim to help audiences reimagine what masculinity means, right? And masculinity is plural, and to raise awareness about the concept of healthy masculinities, while also providing skills and resources that promote self-awareness, healthy relationships, and thriving communities. So it's designed basically to be a guide for facilitators of basically anywhere to frame and engage in conversations and activities around healthy masculinity. So it's important to note that this toolkit is kind of, it's a living document, right? So it's going to grow and it's going to evolve, and it's been co-created and co-authored by many people in a community of practice. So we definitely welcome any and all feedback, and we intend to update the toolkit pretty often in response to community input and wisdom. So feel free to share any feedback either via my email or in the chat. So we use healthy and toxic as a means to understand the nuances of masculinity. We're also acknowledging that there's no perfect healthy masculine person, nor is there a completely toxic masculine person. We know that human beings are complicated and we can hold and express multiple identities. And we're also all in a process of learning and unlearning these behaviors and norms. So what the toolkit essentially offers is the opportunity to become more aware of our conditioned behaviors in order to disrupt harmful impacts of patriarchy. So at the end of the day, it's intended to help catalyze, facilitate, and continue conversations about healthy masculinities. And we know that it takes generations to really heal from the harms of patriarchy. So it's not framed to heal individual or collective trauma. However, it can certainly lead to transformations and understandings that contribute to that healing. So is there anything that you want to add, Ian, or should I add anything about anything else? Did I leave anything out? I can talk more.
I think you did great. Again, welcome folks to ask questions throughout, if that's helpful. But Alexandra, appreciate you welcoming us. And then Michael, thanks for kind of framing things up. Adrian, Alexandra, anything you would add to what Michael has shared? Great. Michael, anything else you want to say?
I don't think so, except welcome. And I think I forgot to say like my food or something. I think I'm looking, I think I'm looking forward to just like soups. I love soups, and you can't really have soup in summer. Well, you can, but how much gazpacho can you eat? So, you know, but yeah, that's my thing, soup, that I'm looking forward to.
Looks like there might be a competition around soup season happening at the University of Utah. Michael, if you want to make a trip out there. So lots of good soups coming. I know folks are still joining. Welcome. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to go ahead and share screen now. We're going to try to see faces more than we see the screen, but wanted to make sure you had a chance to take a look at this is what the toolkit looks like. I know many of you have already downloaded it. Appreciate Michael walking us through a little bit of an overview, knowing what to access where on the different pages. Michael mentioned how much of a collaboration this has been with a number of leaders in our community. We wanted to make it relevant to New Mexico, and we look to local leaders to do so. Really appreciate that. Want to name by organization, the NewMexicoWomen.Org, Table Women United, Transgender Resource Center, New Mexico Health Equity Partnerships, and Together for Brothers for all of their outstanding work coming together and being part of this collaborative. And I'm going to scroll to, I think it's page 14, which talked about creating a container, which we are doing even in this space. It leads into setting both the physical container on 14, and then as we start our activities, creating a container. So what you all can expect from us today is a little bit of maybe high-level overview of what's in the toolkit, and then trying on the activities. We are lucky to have some really excellent trainers with us, in Adrian and Michael and Alexandra. And so we're going to try on some of these things so you can experience it and then put your own flavor on it. So don't want to speak to all of the things that you can do in the toolkit, but wanted to offer how I like to set sacred containers in space that I facilitate. So again, this is page 16 and 17. I'm going to stop share so we can see each other. But when I'm in space, I invite people to bring their whole self, bring their full self. We are more than just brain taxis. And so I find that offering some sort of a grounding practice can be helpful to folks. So I'm going to offer one of those practices to you now and invite you to have your video on or off, whatever you prefer. Invite you to sit or stand as tall in the world as is comfortable for you. If it's safe for you, I invite you to soften your gaze or close your eyes. And as you do this, I invite you to take big, deep breaths in through your nose and exhale deeply through your mouth. Continue this pattern of taking big, intentional breaths in through your nose, exhaling out through your mouth. With each breath, creating more spaciousness. With each breath, welcoming more calm. And with each breath, coming home to your body. With your next inhale, I invite you to drop your awareness from your mind into your heart. Perhaps you can quiet and calm your body enough so you can feel your heartbeat from the inside. And as you continue to take big, deep breaths, notice how your heart rises and lifts on your inhale, how it settles back down with the exhale. With your next breath, maybe breathe into the back of your heart, giving it some additional support, noticing what happens in your body when you breathe in to support your heart. Maybe with your next inhale, breathing in some gratitude to this fist-sized muscle that has been working for you pretty much nonstop since you were in the womb. How it creates a soundtrack for your life, how it keeps the beat and the rhythm of who you are, how it guides you with your decisions and your love and your passion. Breathing in and appreciating this muscle. Your next inhale, invite you to drop your awareness all the way to the soles of your feet, maybe wiggling your toes, rocking your heels back and forth, or settling your soles back on whatever's underneath you, and remembering that underneath the structure on which you find yourself, underneath carpet or wood or concrete, deep down is land and soil and Mother Nature. And with your next few breaths, invite you to breathe in and remember your connection to place. You can imagine roots stretching down out from your soles into the land, into the soil, connecting you with everything that's underneath you. spreading out, interconnecting trees, plants, flowers, connecting you with your ancestors and with each other across communities, across places. And as you feel this connection to the ground, I invite you to acknowledge and remember the first people of wherever you find yourself. Breathing in some gratitude and appreciation for the first people of the land and all the stewards who have made it possible for us to be present here today, now. Your next few breaths, I invite you to scan your body, noticing anything else that might need your attention in the moment. Parts of your body that feel open and strong and alive. Parts of your body that might feel a little tight, fatigued, or closed without judgment. Noticing how your body is sending messages to you. Breathing in whatever you might need to those different parts sending messages. We will close our practice with 3 big, deep breaths as we begin to sync a little more as a collective. So I invite you to take a big inhale through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Second breath in through your nose. Out through your mouth. Third breath in through your nose. And out through your mouth. When you're ready, I invite you to slowly open your eyes. Take a look around the space where you find yourself. Noticing the natural light, if it's present. Noticing any details or items of beauty you may have overlooked before coming into this space, and allowing your body to settle by noticing the entrance and the exit points within the room. So by offering these types of practices, we can welcome people's full selves. We can maybe change the dynamic a little bit from rushing from one Zoom or meeting to another, and getting out of maybe the production part of our brain to the being part of our brain, to allowing ourselves to be in the moment, to be with each other, to be connected to ourselves, to be connected to our breath, and experience the learning together, having those things possible and close to us. So with that, I think I turn it back over to Michael, who will share a little bit information about values.
Yes, so I'm going to go over something called getting clear about values and vision. And I think this starts at around page 14 or 15 in the toolkit. But this is really important because this is kind of a base activity that's going to inform all of the work that you do, that this kit actually helps you prepare to do. So the learning outcome basically for this activity is that your participants will have a shared agreement and alignment around the core values and vision that inform and guide their work around healthy masculinity. So it's the foundation basically for everything else that comes after. You're going to spend about half an hour to an hour, depending on the size of your group and just how much time you actually have available to you. So the things that you're going to need, and this really is going to depend on how you actually run this, but a flip chart, Post-its, or like note cards, paper, pens, markers, and then obviously if you're working online, computers and internet access, and something like a Jamboard or a way to share your screen, or something like Zoom even, which gives you the ability to share comments. So basically what you're going to want to do is you're going to ask each participant to generate 5 values that will be helpful to guide engagement with the toolkit. Some of my favorites, for example, are honesty, authenticity, humility, perseverance, and love. We have a really helpful link or list. I'm going to put the link in the chat in just a second. And you can use that as a reference. It's really helpful just to kind of help you think about what some of those values could be. So when the New Mexico Healthy Masculinities Collaborative built this toolkit, and during that work, the values that were used were love. And really the reasoning behind this is Dr. Martin Luther King explains that justice is really love and calculation, meaning that love is the root of justice. The other one was courage, because it takes courage to check pride, make space, acknowledge interconnectedness and smallness in the world. And it also helps us live all these values into being, and all these values cultivate courage. The next are really also very important, and please don't use me as an example for how to pronounce these words. I'm not the authority, but Ke'e and Sigi Ma Vi and Komadrazka. Ke'e and Sigi Ma Vi are Diné and Tewa terms that mean loving, caring, responsibility for self, earth, and others, and the relationship to spirituality, community, and connection to the earth. Comadrazga is a Spanish term referring to reciprocal relationship, kinship, and care. The last value that was chosen was presence, because you can't really love courage or have courage or belonging if you're not present. Full body presence is required to listen and be non-judgmental. So sometimes we need to be present to do the work in front of us, and then the vision emerges. All right, so those are some examples. After your participants have chosen their values, each participant writes their 5 values on a Post-it note or whatever digital tool it is that you've chosen to use. And then you'll split the group into smaller groups of about 2 to 4 people, again, depending on the size of your overall group. And then that's where you're gonna share individual values and agree on 3 to 5 that can represent the group, right? So you're gonna just basically hone in on which 3 to 5 values do we think represents this particular group, and how, what we discussed. And then after those smaller breakout groups, the larger group comes back together and the facilitator begins to organize and connect values that are similar. After that, the group will have an opportunity to review all the different areas where there's commonalities and differences. And then the group is going to distill even further down to identify 3 to 5 shared values to hold them together as a collective during all of your activities. So then the facilitator will lead the group in a conversation in response to this prompt. What is possible for this group if we live into our shared values as we work on healthy masculinities? So if this group intends to continue working longer term around healthy masculinities, then it might be more helpful for the facilitator to summarize everyone's responses into a rougher, high-level statement that serves as a vision for the overall work. Anyway, if there's any remaining time left in the activity, then we invite you to ask the group to identify what these values would look like as behaviors, meaning what behaviors would help us put these values into practice. And this allows the group to ground the values identified into ways of being in a community of practice together. And that's ultimately what we're here after. And if you have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to share in the chat. I'm just looking through. Oh, and I'll share a list of values that I think you'll find really helpful as well.
Thanks, Michael. Again, really eager to make it as interactive as possible. So if folks have questions or concerns, invite those in the chat. We can also pause if anything's coming up for folks right now before we move into the gender glean activity that Adrian's going to lead. But anything coming up for you in terms of overview, how you set a container, and then clarifying the values piece. Let's see, Abla, do you have something you want to share?
Oh, sorry. No, I was just not on mute. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much for doing this. It is very informative and very helpful.
Anyone else have something right now before we hear out from Adrian? Alexander?
So although I'm part of this collaborative now, I was not during the creation of the toolkit. So I guess I'm just curious if you all could speak a little bit to why you felt like these were important ways to open this particular set of activities.
So I think, like I mentioned at the beginning, this is really going to be this piece is really important because it's going to drive the rest of the discussions that you have surrounding masculinities, because this is really the grounding piece that where you talk about what do we mean when we talk about masculinity, what do we mean when we talk about a plurality of masculinities, and how does that apply to the current socio-political context and the kind of work that we want to do and how we want to be open. Every other conversation that you have in this work and as you move through this toolkit is going to pivot on how we began, and this is the place that you begin. Am I capturing that, Ian? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that, Michael. Adrian, I wonder if there's anything that you would add.
No, I think that covers it.
Yeah, I think setting the tone is so important. So I think how you enter space, how you create space that feels a certain way, and then how you move into some guardrails or the things that are going to guide you in the space around the values, all seems like helpful front-loaded work that then as you move through the other spaces, you can reconnect and anchor into some of those pieces. Yeah, thank you for the question. So I will encourage us to move into Adrian's activity with gendered me. And Adrian, please let me know if there's anything I can do on the tech side to help share the toolkit or share anything else.
Okay, great. Let's take a look at it. The most important tool for this activity is this image. And if you do the download of the toolkit from the website, that is an appendix actually. So there is a really good full page copy of this image as Appendix D in the PDF of the toolkit. So that's very easily isolated to be printed out, which is really ideal in my opinion. If people have a paper copy of this in front of them with markers or stickers or colored pencils or crayons or anything like that, that to me is the best way to run the activity. But when you're virtual like this, naturally people are going to have their own copies of it in some way. I think it is still best if each person has a printed out copy. But if that's not possible, or if you're already at the threshold of doing it like we are here, then I think really if folks are able to, if you can pull up your own copy on your screen, that's great. If you don't have that, then just look along with me. You'll be able to do this exercise mentally. So you see that it's really flexible. You can do it with the actual paper in your hand, or you can do it even if nobody has the paper at all. So today we'll do it in that way where we'll kind of share this page and just verbally make our marks. Mentally make our marks on this page. And then some of y'all will verbally share your marks if you feel open to that or want to do that. But first, let's talk through what all of these things mean. So my name's Adrian Lawyer. I use he pronouns, and I am one of the two founders of the Transgender Resource Center of New Mexico way back in 2007. So we are a statewide nonprofit organization that tries to improve the lives of trans and non-binary New Mexicans and our families and loved ones through a combination of direct services, advocacy, and education. So we are really and truly just here to help trans and non-binary people. If you are a person like that, or you know a person like that who needs help, the website for our organization is in the chat with the rest of my contact info. So you can reach out to us right now while we're doing the activity, or as soon as we get done, if you need some kind of help from our organization. But this activity is a baby of what we would call our education initiative. So in my time at TGRC, I have conducted around 3,500 trainings that we call transgender cultural fluency trainings for all different types of people. I actually just got back from Seattle last week, where we were training folks who work in prisons up in and around Seattle, Washington. So we've trained a lot of corrections folks, but we also train doctors, nurses, teachers, attorneys, family groups, faith communities. We always say if you have 5 or more people that will let us do our 2-hour trans training for them, we will do it for them. If you can get 5 people together, we will provide the training. And this image is no longer part of our slide deck, but for a long time it was. This is how we visualize what I often just call the 4 things, or the 4 aspects, or the 4 attributes. And from the time I started doing these trainings in about 2008 until today, where we have a new, amazing, young education program manager who's taken over all of that work for me and is now conducting all of the trainings. Throughout all of that time, from one trainer to the next, explaining and defining and differentiating between these 4 things is actually the heart of the training. If we are not able to do anything else in our training, then we try to do what we're about to do right now, which is give definitions to these 4 things, explain how they're not all the same thing, define transgender and cisgender, and that is really the heart, the beating heart of what we call transgender cultural fluency training. So when we have to distill it like this is the way we kind of visualize all of that. But now as a group, let's actually do those definitions. Okay. So, let me get the chat up here. Somebody's talking to me. Oh, no, not me, just talking. All right. So, yeah, let's first talk about what we would call sex. Ooh, that always sounds so exciting, but we don't mean sex like that. We're talking about sex, which means the body. Okay. So there's 2 different types of sex that we usually talk about in our trainings. We talk about biological sex and what that means. And we talk about what we call your designated sex or your assigned sex at birth. So who in here, does anybody in here feel brave to say what you think is biological sex? Do you know how we would define biological sex? You can type it in the chat. You're very welcome to unmute your microphone. My friends who are on here and colleagues, this does not exempt you. You're very welcome to participate and chime in. If you think you have an answer, you may be priming the pump by answering too. So who thinks you know how to define biological sex? I do have the answer, but I'm going to let there be an awkward Zoom pause, because I know there are other people who also have ideas. What is one part even of biological sex? Can you name one of the component pieces of what we would call biological sex? Yes, I see you, Leanna.
Hey, hi, Adrian. Good to see you. I guess I am thinking like chromosomes or like hormonal dominance or something to that effect.
Yes, absolutely. Those are 2 of the really important component parts of biological sex. I actually think there are 5. There are 5 ingredients to what we call biological sex, right? And hormonal milieu are your hormones, your chromosomes, those are 2 of them. Can anybody name even one more?
Your genitals?
Yes, thank you for just saying it, right? What we find is that people say the phrase biological sex and they actually just mean your genitals, when of course that's not all there is to it. But genitals is usually the first thing we think of when somebody says biological sex. Okay, now we have 3 of the things: your genitals, your hormones, your chromosomes. The other 2 things are what we would call your gonads. That's your internal reproductive organs, right? With humans, we typically think of ovaries and testes when we think of gonads, but not always, right? Sometimes people have different types of gonads. And gametes, right? So you're like reproductive cells. So whether your body is one that produces sperm or eggs, or maybe something else, or both, or neither, that's your gamete production. And scientists actually go to gametes kind of at the bottom of everything. Like that, gametes is often how the fundamental decision is made about whether an organism is what we would call male or female. So that's kind of interesting. But with humans, we think of genitals, gonads, hormones, chromosomes, and gametes. That's your biological sex. Gosh, how complicated is that? Woo! Right? That took us freaking 7 minutes to define biological sex because there's so many pieces to it, right? It's a really complicated interlocking system. And we're talking about biological sex in very high order primates like us. So this is complex stuff that we're talking about. Okay, so your designated sex is much simpler, right? It's only one of those 5 things and it's just genitals. That's all it is, right? And we call this your designated sex because to me, that more accurately and neutrally describes what typically happens for a newborn baby in dominant US culture, right? In the dominant US culture, when a baby is born, whether it's in or outside of a medical facility, usually there is some adult there who is sort of helping out. We would say like attending the birth, right? And those folks look at the baby's body. We just visually inspect the external genitalia of the baby. And from the size, shape, and appearance of the genitals, we designate the baby male or female, usually right onto their birth record, right? On their birth certificate or birth record, we record it's a boy or it's a girl based simply on the genitalia. And that's actually okay with me. I'm not even upset about that, but we can't call that biological sex, right? Because with most babies, most of the time, nobody knows what chromosomes they have. Nobody knows what their hormones or gonads are going to look like, right? That we don't scan the baby's body. We just use the genitals. And the interesting thing about biological sex is that somewhere between 1.5% and 4% of human beings have some kind of variation within their biological sex. There are humans who are born with genitals that are ambiguous, that seem to be sort of in between the typical types. There are other human beings that are born with completely typical genitalia, but absolutely atypical chromosomes, right? With chromosomes, we usually think of XX and XY, but there are folks who are XXY. There are people who have mosaic genetics. That means some of your cells are XX and some of the other cells in your same body are XY. Isn't that fascinating? And all of this today is called intersex. And again, maybe 4% of human beings have always been born with these usually very benign differences. Most intersex people do not feel like there is anything wrong with their bodies. Most intersex people do not experience pain or functional issues from these natural variations. So this is just another way that human beings are born, and they've always been like that, right? In fact, I always feel the need to say it's about 1.7% of people who are born with natural red hair, right? So natural red hair is a normal human variation. We know that now, but we didn't always. Right? We were really mean to redheaded people. We said that they were demonic. We said that they did not have a soul. We said that they would try to steal your soul because they did not have a soul. I'm sorry, what? Right? So we are typically really not very good at integrating and understanding minority characteristics, but we can learn because we have learned how to be more inclusive and affirming of redheaded people, right? So we can learn how to treat intersex people like they also have a normal human variation, a minority characteristic, just like redheads, right? That's biological sex, tons of variation there. So designated sex is just the genitalia. And every one of us in here knows which one of those we were, right? Everybody in here knows when you were born, what they wrote down on your birth certificate or your birth record, it's a boy or it's a girl. That's called your designated sex at birth. Okay. So separate from that, right? On our image, you can see that it's a separate circle. Its own rung is what's called gender. Does anybody know how to define gender? Right? If it's not the same thing as your genitals, then what is it?
Isn't the way you're, sorry, isn't it the way you're legally represented?
Oh, that's awesome. For a lot of folks, it is. For a lot of people, we try to make sure that our legal identity documents are aligned with our gender. That's such a great thing to think about when we talk about gender. I love that that came into your mind. But gender today is actually kind of a little bit more esoteric. I'm so sorry that I'm not a host. Ian, do you know if we have transcription enabled today? We may not have done it at the meeting level, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, I'm going to take a look to see if I can troubleshoot that.
It should just be able to be turned on. If you don't have it in your menu bar and stuff, it probably isn't there. I'm so sorry, Anne. We'll make sure and do better next time. I'm sorry about that. Does anybody else have
Can we say
yeah.
social construction or social construct?
Yes, gender absolutely is a social construct, right? Other animals besides us typically don't have it. right? Dogs are male and female, but they're not usually boys and girls, Dogs don't really care what pronoun you call them usually, right? So gender definitely is something that only exists within culture, culture, basically. You have to have culture to have gender, okay? But then at the individual level, how would we call it? And it's okay, if y'all are too nervous, I will tell you. I know it's hard with the transgender trainer to want to do these definitions, but I don't judge, I swear. I really don't. And if you feel awkward, you can type, right? Don't feel that you have to come off mute if that's not cool for you. Okay, the way we define gender in our training right now is simply what you deeply internally know to be true about yourself. Every person in here knows whether you deeply internally feel like a man, a woman, or a non-binary person. And that is your gender, right? It's internal. There's not a way for another person to see your gender, right? Your gender is just your own self-knowledge. That's the only way we can define it right now. I believe that it'll actually turn out to have a location in the brain, but we're not anywhere near as sophisticated as that right now. So this is just your own truth about yourself, right? And the most important thing that I get to say about sex and gender every day when we train is that they are two different things, not one. And in our culture right now, we think that your sex and gender are the same thing. Why do I say that? Well, I bet you've heard folks say to kids stuff like this. I hear it all the time. People say to a child something like, oh, well, you're a boy because you have a penis, right? And the minute we say that, we're saying that these are the same thing. You know what else tells me that we have these conflated? The get-togethers that we currently call gender reveal parties for fetuses that haven't yet been born, right? If we're saying that we can tell the gender of a child from the genitals of the fetus, then we're saying that these are the same thing. And culturally, that's what we believe. I'm not even upset, right? We go out to teach every day because we know that people believe these are the same thing, but we know they can't be the same thing. Why do I know that? Because I am transgender, right? That's why I started a transgender organization. So in my case, what that means is I was designated female at birth, right? When I was born in 1970 in the hospital in Oxford, Mississippi, they picked me up and they said, it's a girl, yeah. But I knew that I was a boy by the time I was 3 years old. So as soon as I knew that I was a human being, I also knew that I was a boy. And it's really typical for humans to know their gender between the ages of 3 and 5, just the way that I did. Whether you're transgender or cisgender, most people know what gender they are by the time they're 5 years old. That includes trans people. But it doesn't mean that every trans person does, for sure. Right? There certainly are people who are on a journey and aren't able to articulate themselves by the age of 5. That's not a prerequisite, but it's also very typical. So when you know little kiddos like me who are saying, I'm a boy, I'm a boy, I'm a boy, even though everybody thinks that they are a girl, we've got to try to be more sincere about listening to them, right? They know what they're talking about. The very best proof of my gender at 3 is me. Because I'm 52 years old now, and here I am, I'm still a man, exactly like I said I was when I was 3. So it's really a steady thing for most people, and it's something people know really early on, right? So your gender is something you have to tell people. It's what's on the inside of you. It's not the same thing as your sex necessarily. In fact, I think of sex and gender the way I think of hair color and eye color, right? Because those things also very frequently match. I bet in this Zoom room, we have more than 50% of the people in here who have brown hair and brown eyes, right? But there's some of us in the room who don't. I have brown hair, but I have blue eyes, and that's okay, right? I mean, it's okay. So it's okay if your hair and your eyes match, and it's okay if they don't match. These are two different things. They're not the same thing. That's why they have to have 2 circles here, right? And the third thing that comprises gender, but is still yet a separate thing, is what we would call your gender expression. So what is your gender expression? Who can answer that? When we say the phrase gender expression, what are we talking about?
Isn't it the way we like to present ourselves, the way we share our inner feeling about our own gender?
Yes. Well, it's definitely, yeah, y'all are right on it. How you appear, the expression of how you feel inside. What you said is absolutely right. For many, many, many of us, we use our gender expression to share how we feel inside. But guess what? Not everybody, right? Some people's gender expression does not actually tell you how they feel on the inside. And so that is why we have to also define this as a separate thing. And it really does just boil down to the external pieces of all of this. Gender expression is comprised of things like your clothing, your haircut, jewelry, makeup, facial hair, the way you talk, the way you walk, your mannerisms, some of your activities, some of your preferences. Those are part of your gender expression. Your name, whether you like it or not, is part of your gender expression, especially when we're in spaces like Zoom. Not only do we see each other's faces and shoulders, we're seeing each other's names all throughout the entire meeting. So names also cause our brains to start trying to classify people as men or women, right? Gender expression is another thing that we have totally linked to gender. So at least in dominant US culture, which is what I grew up in, I was taught that your genitals are your gender, and I'm trans, so I know that's not true, right? Your genitals are a very true and real thing about you. That's your sex, but your gender is a second real and true thing about you that may not match your genitals. Now, the same exact thing is true about your gender and the way you look. For some of us, it matches, right? For me, my most comfortable gender presentation is pretty stereotypically masculine for the culture that I grew up in. So yes, it matches the way that I feel about myself, and it matches the pronouns that I use, which are the he pronouns, right? So in my case, those things happen to be like quote unquote aligned, right? I use he pronouns. I look pretty stereotypically masculine, and internally I feel like a man. But there are other people all around me who don't have those things necessarily aligned, right? The way somebody looks on the outside may tell us how they feel on the inside, but it also might not. Can y'all think of any examples of that? Can you think of a person whose gender expression does not match their gender? I always think about drag performers. I think about like RuPaul, RuPaul. Yeah, perfect, Teresa. That's right. To me, we know RuPaul because he's been famous a long time. He's been interviewed a million times. He is not transgender. He is gay, but he's what we call cisgender. He feels like a man on the inside. And when he was born, they said that he was a boy, right? So he is a cisgender man, but he elaborately dresses up like a woman to perform. And if you saw him out on the street, you might think that he was trans. You might think that he was trying to tell you how much he feels like a woman, but he's not. It's just the way he performs. He's an entertainer, right? Also, the big group in my life that have helped me to take these apart are non-binary people, right? Non-binary people don't feel like a man or a woman. To be non-binary is to feel that your gender is something other than what we would classify as man or woman. So how are they supposed to look non-binary? You can't look non-binary. Non-binary people are allowed to wear whatever they want, and they do, right? Non-binary people sometimes use he pronouns or she pronouns. So when we really recognize the fact that non-binary people are here with us, they have always been here with us. They are a significant percentage of the population. Once we realize that we can't use people's looks to guess about who they are on the inside. That is why we're sharing our pronouns everywhere. I see a few of y'all in here. We're putting our pronouns everywhere now because we've started to finally realize that there's no way for anybody else to know my pronouns except for me to tell them. I have non-binary friends who look and dress exactly like me. I have non-binary friends who have a beard. I have non-binary friends who have short hair. I have non-binary friends who dress differently on different days. So how are you going to know, right? So I realized that there's no way that you can guess whether I'm non-binary or not, and you can't guess my pronouns, and I don't want you to guess. So I put my pronouns in my Zoom to keep people from guessing, to keep on normalizing the idea that once we realize that all these different kinds of people are with us, once we realize that your gender expression is not the same thing as your gender, we kind of have to start sharing our pronouns. We don't have any other way to have them. Okay, now the fourth of the four things is what we refer to as orientation. And look how that does not even touch the other three. They have no relationship to each other, right? And this is something that I still get questioned about a lot. Like, isn't this all just sort of like when I teach about trans stuff, they're like, well, is that all the same as gay? And we're like, well, no, right? All trans people couldn't be gay. How that would not make any sense, you know? And all trans people couldn't be straight because trans people are just a different kind of people, like having red hair, right? So redheaded people are all different orientations. Trans people are all different orientations. But I think we might created that situation by saying LGBT, right? We invented LGBT and that kind of jams them all together and then people get a little bit confused. But for us, it's really important that we take those apart. LGB has to do with who you're attracted to. Your orientation are just relative terms that we use to talk about what kind of people you like, or possibly not, right? These days, we know that there are people who are identifying as asexual. They strongly do not feel that they have a hormone problem. They strongly do not feel that they have a trauma problem, right? They just feel that it is their inborn orientation to not want to have sex with other human beings. It doesn't mean that they don't like people, right? Don't get confused about that either. It's not even about relational intimacy or having close relationships. They just don't feel sexual drive towards others. And they feel that that is their natural and totally normal orientation. So orientation now we use to describe your attractions to others or lack thereof, right? If you're asexual, then you're describing the fact that you don't feel those types of attractions. But lesbian, gay, those are words that we use to mean people who are attracted to the same gender. Bisexual means more than one gender, right? And actually, when we feel attraction to others, we're not feeling attracted to their designated sex at birth, right? I know since I've transitioned, there must have been someone in an airport somewhere who looked across the room and thought that I was attractive, but they did not know that I was designated female at birth, right? That's not why they were attracted to me, and it's not why they were not attracted to me. Most of the time, we don't know what genitals other people have, right? I mean, let's just break that down. In our culture today, we don't really share the info of who has what genitals. If we needed that information, I guess we would put it on our name tags, but we don't. So we don't need that info, right? And that's your designated sex. Even if you've had surgery on your genitals, whatever's going on down there, that all has to do with your sex. And most of the time people don't know that, right? We can't really be attracted to somebody's internal gender because they can be hiding that. I think about trans people pre-transition, for example, right? Somebody who's pre-transition is not being perceived as their real gender, but somebody can still be attracted to them, right? So when we feel attraction to others, we're actually most of the time being attracted to their gender expression. Attraction is usually, but not always visual even, right? And I certainly recognize that blind and visually impaired people feel attraction. I get that. But for a lot of people, there's an immediate component of it, which is looking at that person and just saying, wow, I like the way they look. I feel attracted to them, right? And so what we're really responding to is the way they're presenting themselves more than any of the internal stuff, because we couldn't know that about somebody. Okay, so then let's finish with the definitions that we need to do. And let's talk about transgender and cisgender. So right now we use the word transgender simply to mean any person who has a sex and gender that are not the same value. Right? So like I told you, my designated sex was female, my gender is male. So for me, I fall under the transgender umbrella. But as you can hear, that also means that non-binary people, like linguistically, fall under the transgender umbrella as well. If you know that your internal gender does not match what they said you were when you were born, then for us, that falls under the category of transgender. So recognize that my definition of transgender does not have the word opposite in it. It is not a binary thing. And also our definition of transgender does not have anything about medical treatment in it. Some of us want and need and access medical treatment as trans people, but other trans people may not even feel the need for those things. So we don't want to make the assumption that somebody has what is called gender dysphoria or has the need for those treatments or even has the ability to access those treatments. So being transgender doesn't have anything to do with hormones or surgery by definition. That's a subset. Cisgender, does anybody already know what this means? I kind of gave this away earlier. Can anybody type in or say the definition for cisgender?
Somebody who's assigned, they're in agreement with their assigned sex at birth.
Exactly, right? If your sex and gender are the exact same thing, that's cisgender. And Teresa, I love that you said that because that's the analogous term. Straight is what we would call this in terms of orientation. Cis is what we call it in terms of gender, right? So it's two different things. You can be cisgender and gay, right? In fact, probably 95% of gay people are cisgender because 95% of people are cisgender, right? Now, why do we need the word cisgender? It's kind of interesting that a lot of cis people don't love the word cis, and people sometimes have kind of a negative reaction to it. And in focus groups, they will even say stuff like, hey, I don't like for you to put a special label on me. And we are like, yeah, that must feel really horrible for you, right? There's already a word for me and it's called transgender. So there has to be a word for cis people that is value neutral, right? That is not making that seem better or worse. Because if we don't have a word for the dominant majority group, the word we almost always fall back on is normal, right? We don't even mean to do it. We just do it. People just have said that to me my whole career. Oh, you're either trans or just normal. And we're always like, ouch, no, you can't say it like that. Because our whole point is that to be transgender is normal. I believe that transgender and intersex are minority characteristics like red hair or left-handedness. And human beings don't do a good job with minority traits. So we are in a tough part of history. But in the future, we're going to be seen as like left-handedness. It's really not that big of a deal, you know? So we definitely don't want the opposite of transgender to be normal, because to be transgender is normal. So we have to use the word cisgender to mean the opposite of transgender instead, right? Also, left-handedness to me is fascinating because we persecuted lefties very recently, right? To find redheaded persecution, you have to go back several hundred years. But even in the 1990s, there were teachers in the US who would tie up a little left-handed kiddo's hand in the classroom in order to force that child to be right-handed instead. Teachers thought that you were supposed to correct left-handedness because it was an abnormality, right? I mean, that is so hard to wrap your mind around in 2022. But when I do my trainings, there is always someone in the room who had that happen to them, or who had an immediate family member who was corrected or attempted to be corrected out of left-handedness. Well, today, there are no teachers who would think that that is okay, right? Somehow, in the course of 30, 40 years, we have come 180 degrees where we understand that your dominant hand is wired to your brain in a really important way. There is no positive upside to changing someone's dominant hand. It's actually harmful to try to do it. So teachers who love children stopped doing that. And instead, they just got the little left-handed scissors for the classrooms, you know? And in your entire adult lives, you are never going to even sit through a 30-minute session like this to help you understand why you should not be mean to left-handed people, why God does not hate left-handed people, and why it is normal to be left-handed. Right? Because those trainings are now completely obsolete. But for us, the word cisgender is the word that we're going to build that future on. We cannot say transgender or normal any more than we would say left-handed or normal. We don't say left-handed or normal. We say left-handed or right-handed. So the word cisgender, for me, its best analogy is actually right-handed. The word cisgender is no more PC than the word right-handed. It's the exact same thing. And again, non-binary, just to reinforce that one more time, means that you do not feel like a man or a woman. For some non-binary folks, what it means is actually that they don't feel that their gender is defined by being a man or a woman at all. The gender they feel themselves to be is not in relation to man or woman, right? But my new education program manager, Stacy, does an amazing segment about this. And what they talk about is that gender is not a spectrum. The images and the conversation they use in our training now is to compare gender to a fruit stand. An entire produce market is what gender is, rather than two things with a line in between them, right? They talk about the old apricot and plum gender model that we've been stuck with most of our lives. And then as soon as people started to become aware of non-binary people, they're like, oh, pluots, plum cots. Okay, got it, right? But non-binary people are not pluots. They're also pineapples and mangoes and apples and oranges and bananas. So you can't say non-binary is one thing. It's just whatever is not man and also not woman. So it's not a third silo. It's all the space in between, right? It's everything that isn't man and isn't woman. So that can be no gender at all. People call that agender. Some people feel that they contain all genders within themselves. They call that pangender, right? Some people feel that they are gender fluid, which means their gender even shifts and changes over time for them. So non-binary is a big, huge tent with a lot of different kind of identifications in it and identity labels as well. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do gendered me now, right? We've set the stage. So let's actually, I'm going to give you my dots. And while I'm doing my dots, I want you to think your dots. If you don't have a copy of this in front of you, just do it with your mind, okay, for right now. So we start with designated sex. Oh, let's see if I can annotate. Okay. So my designated sex at birth was female, right? So it goes right there. Okay. It's just unequivocal. I'm not intersex. There was nothing at all interesting about my body when I was born. I was completely typical in that way. And so my designated sex was female all the way on the left, nowhere on the circles. Now, why is it a circle instead of a line? Because these things are not so binary, right? For some people, when I get to gender, you may not feel like a man or a woman and you need places to put your stamp, right? So, but for me, my gender has always been male. I have felt that way from the first memory that I have of myself as a very young child. I have always known that I would have called myself a boy or a man. I tried to tell people when I was 3 years old, but that was 1973. So bad luck for me, right? They did not understand what I was saying at all. So my designated sex is female, but what's yours? Where does your stamp go? My gender is male, but what is yours? Where would you put yourself inside that circle? And you can put yourself anywhere. You may feel like both. You may feel like none. You may feel like you're over here on the like 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock diagonal. That's the whole point. And guess what? Where you put your stamps today might not be where you would have put them a year ago. They also might move a year from now. For a lot of people, this is a journey, right? Not just a destination. For some of us, it's not. For some of us, these always stay the same. But for some people, these change in your lifetime, and that is okay. That's another reason they're circular, is to show that they're more static, less static, more dynamic, right? Okay, what about my gender expression? For me, I feel like, my gender expression is pretty stereotypically masculine, but then there are things about me that are not at all stereotypically masculine. So I wouldn't go all the way off of the masculine side, but I kind of put mine usually right around here, because of the things that I know about myself that just don't fall into that stereotypical kind of, bunch of characteristics and stuff. So for me, I like to own that mine isn't really there, I'm physically affectionate. I'm a physically affectionate dad. I'm a really good listener. I love Broadway musicals too much, like way too much, so much, I don't know. I just don't think we don't call that stereotypically masculine, right? So that's just some of the few things that I would put myself off of that sort of y-axis there, right? Or x-axis. Okay, so where does yours go? And gender expression is a fascinating one, right? Because on some level, we're actually asking, how do other people see me, right? When I get dressed and cut my hair and all that stuff, how do I think other people actually perceive it? Do they perceive me to be masculine or feminine? Do I fit the stereotypes or not? You know, kind of, that's what we're assessing here when we assess our own gender expression. Okay, now again, look how this is not even touching. The 3 component pieces of my gender over here have no relationship whatsoever to my orientation. They don't connect. They have nothing to do with each other. So my orientation, and I don't know why this is true about me. I'm just telling you. I don't understand it, right? But for me, my orientation falls kind of over here. Like it's not a star, right? I have to see feminine gender expression to feel attraction. I don't comprehend it. I'm just reporting it, right? Before I transitioned in my 30s, I lived for almost 20 years as what we used to call a butch lesbian. So I didn't know how else to think about myself. I thought that I must be a lesbian. Everybody kept saying I was a woman. I did not think so, but I knew now not to try to tell people that. I always wanted to dress and look like this, and I'm only attracted to people who appear feminine, right? So for me, I was like, I guess I'm gay. And I actually found my most comfortable social home there. And I was, you know, there's feminine lesbians, there's androgynous lesbians, but I was a really masculine looking lesbian. That was part of the point of it for me. And then when I transitioned, that's still true about me. I'm only attracted to feminine presentation, but not hyper feminine. I don't mean skirts. I mean women's tennis shoes and women's jeans and women's sweatpants. And all of us know it without even thinking about it. We can compute that instantaneously. And for me, I have to see that presentation, which now I understand means I am attracted to trans women. I'm attracted to transgender women. I'm attracted to cisgender women. I'm attracted to non-binary people who are presenting in a feminine way at that time. I've probably been attracted to a transgender man who wasn't transitioned, you know, because I didn't know that he was a man on the inside. I was just seeing the way he looked on the outside without testosterone and stuff. So for me, you know, now I understand that I don't know anything about who those people are when I feel attraction to them, but I do know they have to be wearing women's clothes, you know, what does that even mean? Blah, right? But I'm telling you, we all know it. We know it without thinking about it. So I know it sounds stupid, but you also know this about yourself. So where would you put your star, or where would you fill in your circle here? Right? If you're asexual, then you're definitely going to put your stamp right down here, you know? If you're pansexual, you're probably going to put it right up here, you know? Because you don't have those limits on your scope of attraction like that. Some folks can be attracted to people no matter how they're dressed or what they look like. I don't know why that's not true about me. Like in my heart, I feel that way, but in my libido, I don't, right? We all know what our orientation is because it's what you respond to. You know for yourself what you do and don't feel attraction towards. And again, this is like your personal paper, right? You don't have to show this to anybody. But does anybody want to show it to anybody? Is there anybody in here who is at all comfortable talking about any of your dots, anything you want to talk about even? You don't have to share all 4 things. If you want to share one thing that you put up here and what you thought about that, or any kind of feelings that you had about that, I would love to hear back from any participants if you want to share anything about kind of how your stickers ended up on your paper. But genuinely no pressure, seriously, share at will. Awesome. Well, y'all, thank you. Thanks for going on this journey. I appreciate you being willing to do that introspection. Think about this. You can now see how this activity would work with a group for sure, how you would print this out and let people just hold their papers to themselves, right? And that gives people the chance to really interact with the page as well, which I think can almost take on a therapeutic sort of a feeling to it doing it in a tactile way too. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for letting me do this. I really appreciate it so much. Let me pull down the share. Here we go.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you all for participating. Again, we welcome questions, feedback in the chat. If you prefer to keep it maybe private, invite you to share something directly with Adrian if that's more comfortable. I had a follow-up question, if no one else does. So maybe see you coming off mute if there's something you wanted to share with first. So not hearing anything. Adrian, I wonder, as we talk about, folks trying to do this in big group space, how forthcoming have you seen people be? And then how, unfortunately, have some phobias come up or have some pushback, or, when information starts to get sensitive, I've seen things move in directions maybe as facilitators we don't want them to go in. So just curious what your experience has been as people become more vulnerable. If there are other members who are maybe not ready to go there, how you've navigated that space to make it feel as courageous as possible.
I've been very lucky to only do this as a really interactive exercise with groups of like youth and young adults who mainly were self-identifying as queer or within that sort of LGBTQ identity space. And they love doing this activity. Right. For the first time, finally, there's sort of this recognition and acknowledgement that it's not a line or two choices. It's circles. And like, I imagine that people always think there's going to be clusters of these dots, like I've done this. Actually, a really cool way to do it is up on a whiteboard where you draw those things big, or even like butcher paper, right? Where you've drawn the two circles really big, and then you give each young person a marker, like, so they only have their cut, like I'm red now, and I'm going up there and putting my dots, but we don't need to track who's red. That's not even, we're not trying to out everybody, right? But what ends up happening when you back away is that the dots, all the different colored dots are all over those circles. I had a young person come up and say, what do you do out here if you don't even know who you're attracted to? And I was like, yeah, what do you think? And they drew a circle around the circle. And I was like, yeah, so like they just get super creative with it and love doing it and like really want to do it and do it in front of each other and with each other. But with adults, I never even tried that. What I did was what we just did, which was in your mind, put your dots up here so that it is 100% private. And then only do people have to share anything about their dots if they feel like it. But to me, I think there's a benefit to each of us sort of looking inward and thinking of, because most of us haven't thought of our sex as something separate from our gender, as something separate from our expression. In dominant US culture, those three things are completely conflated. So most of us just think, I'm a man. That's obvious to everybody, and I have a penis. And that's it. Like, that's it. I would even define it that way. I'm a man because I look like a man and I have a penis, And so now we're saying, no, those are three rungs of this thing. You have to break down your own identity into those three component parts. Even if they are all on the same side of the circle, you still have to put three dots, not one. Right. And so for me, there's a real benefit to people just peeling back the layers of definition and distinction around these things, even if they don't share. Like, the sharing is not really the crux of it to me. So I think you would mitigate it that way. To me, don't have people share if you think it's going to get ugly, because we don't want any, I would never want an exercise that created non-safety for a trans person, an LGBT person, a non-binary person. That's even where we're getting to now about the pronouns, is it's even when people mean well, you can't really make it compulsory, like at a workplace, because there are trans people who are harmed by that. They're not ready to share their pronouns. They don't want to tell people yet. So you got to be aware of the fact that sometimes it's about keeping it inside. And that is not how we know this exercise succeeded or failed, was through the sharing.
Thank you for that. Love the option, love the choice about what folks share. Any other questions or comments before we do a recognition and then move into, I believe, our final activity? Welcome you again to come off mute or share in the chat. So not hearing or seeing anything come up. I did want to pause quickly and recognize Fatima, who has joined us. If you remember at the beginning, as we went through organizations that contributed to this toolkit, NewMexicoWomen.Org was a very important partner, and want to say thank you and welcome to Fatima, who joined us. And so acknowledging her. Fatima, anything you'd like to share with the group?
Thank you, Ian. It's just great to be here. I've been out of the office and on sabbatical the last few months, so I'm kind of just hopping in to say hi to everyone and see how the training is going and everything like that. And Adrian, thank you. That was just really always so powerful to be a part of. And one thing I just wanted to share was we've received some feedback. We had some folks from the Department of Health here in New Mexico who've used the toolkit. They've been trying to engage with groups of men, and we received feedback, around this module of the toolkit specifically, and how, for groups, especially of cis men, that this activity has been activating, let's say. I don't know if I want to use the word triggering, but, in a space where folks really haven't interrogated their own gender potentially, that some folks have never engaged in this way, and had these questions around, how does this relate to healthy masculinity? Why are we talking about this? And I think it's so important that this is one of the first activities and modules in the toolkit, because it's really foundational, and it's really about how our notions of sexuality, sex, and gender shape all of our gender relations, including any conversation around masculinities, healthy masculinities. And so I just wanted to say that and flag that, because as trainers and facilitators, that might come up, and that conversation, depending on who you're engaging with. And that's, why it is where it is in the toolkit, and why this is so critical. And then at the same time, the facilitators who were speaking with us about this were like, can we move it? Can we move it to the end? So we kind of like, they go through some and then we slide it. And we were like, we defer. Really, people know their own communities. They know, like to your point, Adrian, how to build trust, how to have the conversation. The point isn't, necessarily for folks to share, but to do this introspective work. So, we also trust that facilitators and communities know how to do this the best way they do. So I'll leave that here, and just to say thank you so much to all the other orgs for holding this space, and to everybody on the training and call today. Thank you all.
Fatima. Any other questions or comments before we move to, I believe, our final activity? Great. So I welcome, I believe Alexandra's gonna lead us through a call to action, and then we'll close.
Yeah, thanks. And I just, Adrian, you're kind of a hard act to follow, like that training, like not only was it so powerful, but like you're just really good at it. So thank you for sharing that. Also just modeling, being an excellent trainer. So thank you for that. So there's a lot of activities in this toolkit. We don't have time to review all of them. But for the final one, what I wanted to do was kind of a hybrid of asking you all to participate and then having a little space to reflect on it. So for this final one, the outcome is that participants and the group as a whole will identify several specific behaviors to which they can commit to disrupt toxic masculinities and build healthy masculinities. Participants begin establishing a practice and plan for ongoing accountability around healthy masculinity work. So I can just put that in the chat because it's a lot of words. So I was hoping actually if what we could all do now is take about a minute and think to yourself, you can write multiple things. So a key takeaway and or an action that you can take on to carry the work forward. And so, something that you learned today and some action that you are willing to take. So just we'll take about a minute. And then for folks who are comfortable, when we come back together, we can share that out. Okay, I wasn't timing. Was that about a minute, you all? So I will just share my screen. I got to be careful here because my computer is messy. Does anyone want to come off mute and share what they wrote down?
Thank you so much, Adrian. That was really amazing. And yes, you are really amazing at explaining and training us. That was honestly a true honor. What I learned today was the part of how gender is how we feel on the inside, the esoteric aspect to it. I love that, you know, the whole the piece about how it can generally be expressed between 3 and 5 years old. Being a mom of a 5-year-old, for me, that's it's really informative. And the way I will carry it out, I think I will be using that slide with all the kids that ever ask me a question, including mine, because I think it's extremely informative, and the separation between the two is just made so clear. And I think even kids, to help them navigate through what it all means, that was just simple and clear. So again, thank you so much. Thank you for your enthusiasm, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Abla.
In case it helps y'all too, I forgot to say that info even comes from the American Academy of Pediatrics, right? Even the Pediatricians of America have reinforced that kiddos typically understand a conception of gender and their own gender between 3 and 5. So that is the typical time, right? Super interesting.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I'll share.
Thank
I'm gonna
you.
see if I can catch all the categories. Yeah, something that I learned was more about like I can't remember the phrasing that Adrian used, but like the sort of medical aspects of sex, like thinking about gonads and gametes and that kind of stuff, and also makes me want to do so much more research and re-listen to this amazing radio lab I heard. But and then I think moving forward, I'm working on a sexuality education program with Community Against Violence presently. There's definitely plans for there to be a gender and sexuality aspect, and the toolkit as a whole seems really important to inform that, and and to incorporate especially this activity. And thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Also, if I'm writing down what you say and I'm not capturing what you were trying to communicate, please let me know. Any other folks willing to share?
Alexander, not sure if you can see some of the chat, but I know.
Oh, no, I can't. Sorry. Thank you, Ian, for flagging that.
It's helpful. I could maybe do a quick voiceover.
Sure.
Not trying to speak for people, but a commitment to discuss this with, again, our own children. Someone who has a child who's a freshman, and be well prepared to discuss that with a goal to involve all students, because even in college, there are people who maybe don't have as clear an idea about gender. There's another acknowledgement: gender is very complex and a fluid concept to explore. When navigating these conversations, we need to provide space for folks to grapple with any self-reflection, internal conflict, or external conflict related to the topic. So thank you, folks, for sharing some comments there. Anyone else want to jump in?
Well, thank you. So for this activity, and then one of the ideas, was someone going off mute? Was that you, Fatima? Okay. So after we've recorded people's next steps and takeaways, this is something that can be shared out with the rest of the group, via an email or something. So there's a sense of shared action moving forward, a sense of mutual accountability, and just this commitment to moving towards a vision of healthy masculinities. So I don't know if we just have a few minutes left. I don't know if people have other feedback or questions about this activity, about things in the toolkit that we didn't cover, things that we covered earlier.
So not seeing anybody coming off mute. Maybe you want to do some closeout and some next steps. Michael, Adrian, Fatima, Alexandra, invite you to jump in and share as well. To Alexandra's point, we do plan on having additional train the trainers for some of the activities that weren't covered today. Those might be forthcoming. And when we identify those dates and times, we will share that information with everybody. So welcome you to join us then. We also committed to sharing this recording on our website with other folks who are unable to attend in real time. So you can look for that on the website as we share this out for folks to use as a resource. I agree, Adrian is such a brilliant trainer. I'm excited for folks to be able to watch that in real time to learn what that can look like. And then, yeah, just want to appreciate all of the leadership from the different folks who contributed to the toolkit. To echo Fatima, we think this is very much a work in progress. Right. So however this toolkit can be helpful to you in your work, however you can improve on it, however you want to switch up and shuffle the sequence, right? Make each one of these activities your own. I think there's some real clarity from us around, we learned from some really great groups and we try to contextualize it, and we invite everyone else to do the same, as we know all communities are a little bit different. And we trust you as you play with these different activities so that it can be responsive to your needs. And with that, I'm curious if Fatima, Alexandra, Adrian, Michael, anything else you'd like to say as we close?
One last thing is that there will be future funding opportunities for folks who do want to engage in this work in New Mexico specifically, because we are a place-based collaborative, but those will be coming kind of later this year. And so if you did download the toolkit and tick the box that you were interested in those opportunities, you'll see that call later in the year. So that's something that's exciting and hopefully can support some of you who do want to do this work in your organizations and communities.
And I just wanted to say thanks for everyone for joining us today.
Adrian and Alexandra, anything? Nope. Well, thank you all so much. Appreciate the work that you're doing, where you're doing the work. We look forward to connecting and partnering and supporting, however that might be helpful or useful. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and look forward to being in touch in the future. Thank you all.